let's talk about McDaniels then, because the announcement made earlier this week, and
were there other teams looking at him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I think I think there are some teams that, I actually think one thing that might have accelerated things a little bit might have been the Detroit situation, in that I think he would have at least maybe had a shot to get a look in Detroit to replace Ben Johnson.
It's the second time someone has mentioned that, and I just wonder what the appetite would have been for Lions fans to bring in another former Patriots coordinator to come in there and be a coach, because the Patricia thing went so poorly.
But I do think, like, to some degree, they've made so much progress there on the offensive side of the ball over the last 3 or 4 years. And, you want to reward, like, so there's this Tanner Engstrand who's who was on Ben's staff in Detroit, who I think's earned the opportunity. But then there's the question, like, when you've got this train that's moving so fast, like, do you want a first-time guy behind the wheel, or do you bring in a conductor who knows how to run it?
I could just see people balking at the notion that we're going to bring in another guy who made his bones in the Belichick mold.
But don't you think, like, to some degree, don't you think Dan Campbell's earned the benefit of the doubt on that? Like, based on who he hired, based on knowing when to pull the plug on Anthony Lynn, based on, like, trusting Ben Johnson in the first place. Like, don't you think he's earned the benefit of the doubt on that?
Oh, I think Dan Campbell would probably ultimately make the right hire. I think it would be received so poorly. It would be a tough sell. It'd be tough to get support for it. Forget from outside the building, even inside the building. So
with players, I could see that. There might be few enough of them still around. Like, how many guys are left?
Yeah. From the Patricia era, maybe
Decker, Ragnow.
Yeah, maybe not enough to make a big stink about it. But the fact is, he's here, and I asked the question a couple of days ago. I said, "Is it fair or is it okay to question the hiring of Josh McDaniels here to run this offense based on his success or lack of success outside of New England?" Because for the most part, it was received pretty well, and people said, "Great, Josh McDaniels, he can run the offense."
No,
he knows Vrabel.
I'll tell you, like, I think it was the night that Mayo had the bad moment at the press conference. I think was it Arizona that he had I can't remember what it was that he said, but he had a bad moment in the press conference, and I was like, all right, like, it was something where it felt like he was throwing somebody under the bus, and that was the first night where I went on TV and I said, like, I think this is the start of maybe the end for him. And I mentioned McDaniels that night. And so I think that link has been there. That link is there. It's obvious. And there's a ton of good. It's not perfect though. And I don't know, what I don't understand is, like, there's no perfect hire. It feels to me like everybody around here is just like, oh, this is complete. It's not perfect. They haven't worked together as coaches before.
Is it obvious, Bert, that he is a good, bona fide offensive coordinator and coach, or is it okay to question?
Okay,
because of his lack. Even as let me finish. Even as a head coach, he still oversees the offense. If they're defensive-minded head coaches, we give them credit for having a hand in the defense. You could say the same thing for Josh in the offense when he was head coach.
So I would not be worried about the quarterback. I think the quarterback position will be taken care of. I think he'll do a good job with the quarterback.
Fine.
I think he'll be able to construct a good running game. I think my biggest question, and I know Josh has worked on this, but I think this is a fair question to ask. Where is his track record of getting young skill players productive fast?
Especially wide receivers.
Yeah.
Jalen Polk, who was a missing man this last season, I don't know if he'll flourish
even
under
running
Josh
backs.
McDaniels.
Even like running backs took a while to develop here. If you look at the history with James White,
and I'll say it, and
Shane Vereen,
redshirt year,
and this is what Brian Hoyer called me out for the other day. He's going to join us next hour. I said, in a very reductive line of thinking, but whatever, without Tom Brady to bail you out and make
Well, no,
average
he's had
receivers look
he's-
better. How has he succeeded?
He's developed other quarterbacks. So he did develop Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett,
Jacoby Brissett.
Matt Castle. Look, what I'm saying is those are guys who were drafted outside the first round who lasted a long time in the NFL. And so, like, laugh if you want, but, like, that's a third-round pick who's still in the NFL. And so we're talking about, like, having a 10-year NFL career. Jimmy Garoppolo was a starter in a Super Bowl, second-round pick. Matt Castle was an established starting quarterback, won a division title somewhere else, right? Like,
Seventh-round pick, never played in college.
played college. So his track record with quarterbacks is awesome, right? I have no doubt that he'll be good for Drake Maye. My bigger question is like the other skill positions and like how fast can he get those guys up to speed? And like the reality is if you look at the Patriots history and the history of that offense, almost all the receivers were either took forever to develop or came in from the outside, right? Danny Amendola was from the outside. Wes Welker was from the outside. Randy Moss was from the outside. Brandon Lloyd was from the outside. Troy Brown they inherited here and had been here, was a veteran player when he came in here. Obviously, Josh was a really young coach at that time. Julian Edelman, what? Was it like year 5 before he became like what he would become? So like that to me is the question. And I think so much of that has to do with like the point of entry, right? Like, is the offense too complicated, too hard? And it's one thing I know Josh has worked a lot on over the last year. He spent a considerable amount of time with college programs and college coaches. He spent time with NFL programs, NFL coaches. He really had a chance to work on that part of it. And I'll be really interested to see if now they're in a position that if they draft a receiver in the second round, is that guy going to be able to produce right away? Is he going to be able to get the offense
and
retrofitted to a point where it's not like, because that was the thing, and part of that was Brady too. Like part of that was Brady having like a really high bar for what he wanted in his receivers. But I mean, it's not like when Josh went other places, like you had like these young receivers who are flourishing.
Has he succeeded without Belichick or Brady?
I mean, I would say like if you look at the Denver offense. Like, he had a really good year out of Kyle Orton. That was a long time ago now. But he had a really good year out of Kyle Orton after the whole Cutler mess.
the year in St. Louis was not good.
Not good. And everybody got fired, and that wasn't a good team. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. The Raiders. So I'd have to drill back. I'd have to go back and look a little deeper.
Well, Devontae Adams hates him. That I know.
Yeah, I think like that to me is the biggest question is when you're talking about developing young skill talent, right? And you're talking about like if you want to be aggressive with Drake Maye as your quarterback and go get skill talent and go get guys and bring them in here, are you going to be able to get the most out of them? If it's not a guy who has been in the league for 5 years and has like exceptionally high football IQ, because not everybody's
it's so
like
complicated.
And forgive me if I don't get all hot and bothered by his ability to develop quarterbacks into the role of being career backups. That just doesn't excite me.
But I think like when you talk about like developing guys who, like again, like he got the most out of Kyle Orton, and you can again that's something you can look at sideways. But like Kyle Orton was a 4th-round pick, and Josh turned him into a really competent starter for the year that they were together there. So I would just say like, again, like I'm not going to be one of these people that's going to sit here and tell you, oh yeah, home run 10 out of 10, because I don't think there was any higher that was that, you know? I think he's about as good as he's about as perfect a fit as it's going to get. But I've got the questions about developing young skill position talent. And I like, quite frankly, like, I mean, we'll see where the personality fit is too. I know that there's some people that know both guys that like are wondering how that's going to work between Vrabel and McDaniels, because they haven't worked on that level before. They've worked as coach and player.
Sure.
But and they weren't even directly like involved with each other that much then. You know what I mean? Like now they were friendly and everything else.
What are the chances that Vrabel will just say, you know what, Josh, you've got the offense. Good. I don't want to think about it.
Me personally, I think that rarely works.
All right. Well,
Like,
let's
where you
get
just
into it
said-
after the break. We have to break.
If you like that clip, and how could you not? Check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for the latest from the Sports Hub, download at 985thesportshub.com.